Right, welcome everybody. As usual, our weekly Mindset Matters call, and it's a powerful one today. So, first and foremost, I'd like to welcome every single person, 61 and more joining. You are in for a treat. We do these sessions because we feel rewarded when we have an impact on the lives of others. With myself, you can see Maher Awad, co-founder of QBN, but most importantly, a passionate leader, a passionate mentor, and a coach. And if you know the difference, you're a mentor, you're mentoring in an expertise, an area of specialism, but a coach can coach anybody. It's about making a difference in lives. And that's what Maher is so good at. And he does it from the heart. He is passionate about making a difference in the lives of individuals. He's done it without realizing, and now he's doing it intentionally. And that makes you, Maher, super, super amazing because the execution gap that we are going to cover today is a critical piece of training because many people don't recognize it, overlook it, and it feeds in beautifully across the session. So, Maher, the platform is yours. You're here to blow everybody away with what you do every single week with precision, with passion, with persistence. I would say, when you are was passionate about what you do, you present yourself from the heart. So, Maher,
Thank you.
over to
Thank you,
you.
Shazia. Well, you know what? I can't take all the credit. We're doing this together. You're a big part of this. And I know that you're just as passionate as I am. So everybody here on this call, Shazia is a PhD in education. So it's Dr. Shazia Hussain, entrepreneur herself and loves to help others. Especially she has many platforms, including the Empower Her platform, where she helps many individuals, men and women alike. So we're blessed to have her on this call with us, and we'll get right to it. We're amazing. First and foremost, I want to thank each and every one of you for being on this call, for your support and your love and everything that you guys do. It really means a lot to us. Like we said at the very beginning, if we could change one person's life, then we've made a difference. And that's our goal, is to give back. We're both successful entrepreneurs and mindset coaches, and we love to give back and help others. So today's very special topic, uh, the execution gap. So some of you guys somebody asked me this question. Well, isn't the execution gap really just procrastination? And I had to think for a second. Not exactly. Now, procrastination usually is about delaying something you need to do. Execution a gap is a lot bigger than that. It's the space from what you intend to do and what you actually follow through on. So sometimes the gap is caused by procrastination, yes, but sometimes it could be fear, lack of follow through, lack of commitment, awaiting some motivation. You're just waiting for some motivation, feeling overwhelmed, or just simply uh, not having the system in place. So today we're not just going to be talking about procrastination and putting a stop putting things off. We're going to talk about becoming someone who consistently turns intention into the gap. So let's get started. And you know, again, good morning, good afternoon. We have so many people from around the world joining us, and let me just start by saying most of us don't lack the information. It's not an information problem. We know we should exercise. Let's take that for example. We know we should exercise, but we don't. And why? Yet knowing doesn't automatically create action. Do we know that? So that's a fact for me. And there's a saying that I like to say, or a lot of people use, is knowledge is power. You've heard that, Shazia, right? Knowledge is power. Well,
Absolutely.
for me, knowledge is just potential power. So it becomes real power when you apply it, when you execute on it, and you turn what you know into action. So you can know exactly what you should do, why it matters, and even how to do it, and still never move forward. So it's the moving forward is when you apply, that's when it becomes real power. So knowledge creates possibilities. The execution is what creates the results. Yes or no, Shazia?
Absolutely. And I align with you. It's the over-analysis that leads to the paralysis, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the question I want to ask. What is something you already know you should do, or should be doing, but you continue to leave it alone? This is you don't have to answer in the chat. This is just a question for everybody, and even for myself and for Shazia yourself. What is something right now that you know you should be doing, but you keep putting it off? Let's take an example. Someone wants to improve their health, and I know everyone here wants to improve their health. They know they should exercise, let's say 3 times a week, drink more water, get enough sleep. Isn't that a big one? And so what we do, we start researching. We watch videos, we research workouts, we've researched supplements, join a gym maybe. It's not that we don't have enough information. The information is not the problem. So Monday comes around and we skip the workout. Tuesday come around, well, we're too busy. I'll start next week. You know, at the beginning of every year, everybody starts a New Year's resolution, yes? By the end of 30 days, 90% of those resolutions are just out the window. So what are some actions that we can do? Identify one thing that you already know. So stop looking for more information. We already have all the information. Identify the action that you've been avoiding, and then turn "I should" into "I will." So remember, we had that session about speaking, controlling mindset, your inner voice. So stop telling yourself "I should" and start telling yourself "I will." Replace vague intentions with specific commitment. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? And where? So take one action within the next 24 hours. Don't allow another week of thinking to replace one day of doing. Yes or no, Shazia?
Absolutely. And if you phone a friend and you tell them, don't you think you feel accountable? I do. If I've said that I'm going to do something, Maher, I call you and I say, right,
Yeah.
this is the plan. I think the action starts following through because I know now I've actually shared it with you and you're now
I,
going to hold me to account. You're going to say, and I don't want to face that conversation about you holding me to account. So I'm more likely to take action.
I love that. I do that so much. And this is a really good lesson for everybody on this call. Start telling people what you're going to do, and then you start feeling guilty when you don't do them. It's like, okay, I've told so many people that I'm going to accomplish this, I'm going to do that. And then that in itself is a motivation. So a question for everybody on this call: where in your life have you been collecting information when what you really need to do is action? Okay. So you're starting to collect information and it's action. So again, knowledge is just potential power. It becomes really powerful when you start putting it into action. And I want to move on to the next topic, which is stop waiting to feel ready. So action cannot depend on motivation. We spoke about discipline over motivation a few weeks back, right, Shazia? So if you're going to
Absolutely.
wait on motivation, you're just going to be waiting and waiting. So one of the biggest reasons people fail to execute is that they're waiting to feel right. Yes or no? Okay, so it's just not the right time, it's not the right day. You're waiting to feel motivated. Maybe it's a speech that you need to say or a presentation. You're waiting to feel confident. You're waiting to feel less tired, less afraid, less stressed. I mean, the list can go on and on of the reasons why, but successful execution cannot depend on your emotional state, right? There's no way you cannot, you'll never be ready. So if only you take, so for me, is once you start taking that action is when I start feeling motivated. Okay. That's when the consistency will always depend on something that changes from day to day. So once you start taking that action, that's when the motivation kicks in. Right? You don't need to feel ready to begin. So very often readiness comes after your start. So sometimes the action actually creates the motivation. Okay. It's not the other way around. So here's a question to consider. How often do you allow your current mood to decide whether you keep a commitment to yourself? Right? This is a question for everybody, including again myself. How often do you allow your mood to make the decision to keep the commitment? And let's take a real life scenario on this one. Okay. You decide you're going to make an important call. Okay. So it could lead to a new business opportunity. You know who to call, right? You know what to say, but then you start thinking, well, what if they're busy? What if they say no? That's a big fear. The fear of people saying no. That's a real life fear. Maybe I should prepare a little more, right? I mean, times have we said that? And then you just say, I'll call tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and you postpone it again. So then that's when tomorrow becomes next week. And this is a cycle that just goes on and on. Nothing external stopped you. It was your feelings that became your decision maker, right? So what are some actions we could take in this scenario? You know, separate your feelings from your commitments. You can feel tired, feel nervous, uncomfortable, and you can feel uncertain, but you can still take action, yes or no, Shadia. You know, you,
Absolutely.
you use a scheduled start time, and I'm really good about that now. I wasn't when I was younger, but I've gotten really good about making reminders and setting start times for me. Okay, decide when you will act instead of asking yourself later, right? So decide in a definite time, whether you feel like it or not. And thirdly, move before your mind negotiates, because your mind is going to start negotiating and getting excuses and we talked about that on that last session. When it's time to act, start quickly. Don't think about it. Don't give yourself 10 minutes to create 10 excuses, right? Um, so question for everybody again. What would change in your life if you stopped requiring motivation before you took action? Okay. So the key thought here basically is you don't have to feel ready. You have to be willing to begin, right? Shazia, do you have anything you want to add to that point or?
I think for me, it's always been whenever I put something on my calendar, and then next day I look at it and I've already scheduled what I have to do, even if it is something to do with admin or a telephone call, it makes me do it. So penning down what you're going to do will, and then obviously sharing it with somebody will make you do it. And it is that overthinking. I think when we look at even sales scenarios, when we've got, I'm going to make 20 calls today, and then we find excuses, it's too early. This, as you mentioned, we talk ourselves out. So for me, it's like, you're helping somebody. So why are you stopping yourself from helping somebody? And that's where your inner circle and these are sessions that we've all covered come in play, where you might need to pick up a call and say, listen, why don't we sit together and do it? And I think we're too afraid often. We need to become more open to working collaboratively. I think then everybody's businesses will kickstart faster.
Yeah, that's a very good one. And so we're all here to learn, right? And so something that I've learned over the years is maybe the goal is too big, right? We're always talking, when I talk about goals, I like to tell people, yes, it's good to set big goals, but also set realistic goals. That's really important. And you can apply that to the execution gap. So make the first move smaller. Overwhelming sometimes creates that inaction. Sometimes people aren't avoiding the goal, they're avoiding of how big the goal feels. When you look at everything that has to be done at once, the mind can become overwhelmed, yes or no? And when you feel overwhelmed, what happens? That's when we start procrastinating. That's when we start telling ourselves, I don't have enough time right now. I really, I need to focus. I'll start tomorrow. So create smaller goals. The solution uh, is not always more discipline, right? We talked about discipline over motivation, but it's not always just the discipline. Sometimes the goal can be overwhelming. Sometimes the solution is just simply making the next action smaller and clearer. So instead of asking, how am I going to get all of this done? Ask, what is the next thing that I can do? You know, you don't have to climb the entire staircase at once, if it's 1,000 stairs. Just take that first step, right? So is there something that you're procrastinating on because you're focused on the entire project instead of the next step, right? This is a question for everybody here. So let's take a real life scenario. I love real life scenarios because I think people can relate. And some of them, they're not directly from me, but just from experiences in life. And some of these I just put together. Let's take a real life scenario. You need to prepare for an important presentation. And I know everyone, whether you're a student or you're at work, everyone here has had to prepare for an important presentation. So immediately your mind starts thinking about everything involved. Okay. Got to do some research, the slides, the graphics, the talking points. Shazia, you and I go through this every day, the revisions, the practice, the final presentation. Suddenly what should be one project feels like 20 different tasks, right? So instead of starting, you answer emails, you check your phone, you organize your desk, you tell yourself, and it happens naturally. Your body just starts doing it. I'll work on it later when I have more time, right? But imagine replacing with, for the next 15 minutes, all I'm going to do is create the outline, right? Now the tasks feels more manageable. And once you begin, the momentum just starts. How many of you guys started writing a paper, whether it was for school or report, and then you just needed to get started? Yeah, Shazia.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like when I had my book, I had sat on it for a year and a
Yes. Yeah.
and it was just, is it good enough? Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Whereas I had to make a decision, whether it's good enough or not, I'm going to get it out. And I think everybody just needs to believe in themselves and just do it. And evolve. Everything will evolve. We always pivot. And I think perfection is what holds people back. And
And I,
business,
yeah, and I love what Mason, thank you for being on the call. A very young, talented individual, in front of mine. He says 5-year mandatory plans, whiteboard check off, being okay to ask for help. No, you don't have to do it all yourself. So that's a good
that's
one.
a
Thank you
good
for
one. The
sharing.
help one,
The,
Maher, I
the
think
help is a big one. Yeah.
critical because I think we feel sometimes that if we go for, I mean, we can do it ourselves. There's a lot of information online, but you end up taking more time. Whereas if you go for help, even if it's a coach or a mentor, you're saving time. So you've got to assess what's more valuable, time and your outcome, or staying confused and taking more time because that's still costing, right? And I think
Yeah.
we have to be sure about that and just get out and ask for help.
Absolutely. And so on this last topic that we're just talking about, shrink the task, reduce the goal into an action you can begin right away. Focus on the next step. So stop mentally carrying the entire project, while you're trying to complete one step, and use a short starting window. Now give yourself 10, 15 minutes. You don't have to finish. You just simply have to start. Just like with your book, Shazia. It was just getting started. And sometimes that was the kickstart that opened up other ideas for your book. And
But I
so,
connected with an accountability coach and I invested in that because that's what got me to completion. And I think that's what's important. Many of us think we can do everything by ourselves, whereas we all need somebody just to help us get to the finish line. That it's like a kick up the backside, like your parents get you to prepare for an exam. And
yes.
if you have somebody in your inner circle that can work that, it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We talk all the time about plans. And then once you've done it, we know, or I know that it's got to be done because we've already committed in that.
We spoke earlier today about plans. So we're already creating plans for our synergy. Um, so a question for the group, what big task in your life becomes easier when you reduce it to just one next action? Okay. So think of something in your life that you've been putting off that seems overwhelming, but all you need to do is take that first step. And let's take the exercise example. You know that you need to exercise 3 times a week. Maybe you do it once a week just to get started. You're trying to take care of your health, and you have to eat healthier. Well, you know what? I told my son Malik, uh, you don't have to give up soft drinks altogether. The sodas. Maybe you don't drink them during the week, and you just have them on the weekend. So there's just some examples. So you don't need to finish everything today. That's my point. You just need to stop avoiding and take that first step.
Can I catch you on that, Maher? There are
Yes,
people who do
yes.
the opposite. They binge work and then they stop. So rather than, like you said, taking small bite-sized staircase approach, they'll just binge work on something, then they'll exhaust themselves, and then they'll go on a long pause and it will just stay parked. So it's getting the balance right.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And and so as we're approaching our 30-minute mark, I just want to go into our next part of this, and that's build a system that makes action normal, right? Consistency beats good intentions every day of the week. If you have to make a new decision every day about whether you're going to follow through or not, eventually you're just going to talk yourself out of it. So execution becomes easier when the action becomes part of a normal routine. We talked about developing a discipline and creating a routine. So your calendar, your habits, environment, and accountability, like you just said, should support the behavior you want. And accountability is a big one. And that just means, relying on your partner, your spouse, your coworkers, your mentors. Accountability is a big one because willpower, willpower, I'll just say willpower is unreliable. Systems is what creates consistency. The goal is to move on. The goal is to move from saying, I hope to do it to this is simply what I do, right? It's just part of my routine. Exercise has become part of my life and my routine. I actually feel bad when I don't exercise. That's my happy space. So when something becomes part of who you are, right, and how you operate, then you stop negotiating with yourself every time it needs to happen, yes or no. Here's a question to consider. Are your goals supported by a system, or are you depending mostly on willpower? Right? For everybody in this group, do you have a system in place, or are you just relying on willpower to get you to through your task and executing on the things you really need to do? Right? Let's take a real life scenario in this situation. So you have two people, both decide they want to exercise, and I always use exercise scenarios consistently. So person A says, I'm going to try to work out 3 times a week. Person B schedules Tuesday and Thursday at 7 a.m. with a trainer and Saturday at 9 a.m. independently, right? Their workout clothes are ready the night before. Those times are protected on the calendar, right? They
Yep.
have already decided what workouts they're going to do. Both people have the exact same goals, but person B created a system that supports the execution, right? The goal didn't change. What changed? The structure.
Hmm.
The structure changed. And that's what I do. And you can ask my wife every night before I go to the gym the next morning, my clothes, my gym bag, everything is ready. Even my protein shake is ready in a little cup for me to just add water and mix it. And I've already created a system. My trainer is going to be waiting for me that next morning. So rely on a system to help you execute on your goals. You know, put important actions on your calendar. That's a big one. When you
Yeah.
just try to remember about it, and I'm going to do it later, I'll do it tomorrow. No, put them on a calendar. What gets scheduled has as much greater chance of getting done. Yes or no? Remove unnecessary friction. So prepare what you need beforehand and make starting as easy as possible. And finally, create accountability. Like we said from the very beginning, tell someone, track your progress. Establish a deadline that requires you to follow through. I have a question for everyone on this group. What is one system you could put in place this week that would make it harder for you not to follow through? Right? So what's our key thought here? Your intentions reveal what you want. Your actions reveal what you're committed to. Right, Shazia?
Yep.
How are you? I mean, you're great at putting systems together. You're a master at that. Do you have anything
No,
to
for
add on
me,
that?
I just, what works for me is like you said, break it to clarify, be crystal clear, break it down. You mentioned that, schedule it, and then it makes me take action. Then I don't have excuses. I think you've got to train once you start into that routine, and then the next biggie is having somebody accountable. I think it really makes a difference when you share it with somebody because your conscience makes you do it. if you
It
have got
does.
a timeline. And the last one is I always like to keep an eye on the bigger picture when I know what, because if every time I get demotivated, and I'll give an example of your weight and exercise. If you've got a picture of where you're heading, you're going to be
Yeah.
like, this one day, lazy day is going to take me one day away from that. So that why is there, that's connected to you emotionally. And I think for me, that's what makes a difference.
Shazia, I've known you many years, and I just want to congratulate you. You've accomplished so many goals, and you're definitely an example to everybody on this call of saying
Well, thank
commitment
you.
and and
But I
and
think it's excuses. I feel I'm quite competitive, and when someone
yeah,
says you can't do it, and I think everything I started with this phrase when someone said to me, "How are you going to do it? That's not possible." And I said, "It's possible. Just watch me." And they said, "How?" And I said, "I don't know how right now, but what I can tell you, it's going to happen." And I think that's been my golden thread throughout my life, then finding
right.
a solution. No excuse.
No excuses. No excuses. Okay, so today we talked about four ways to close the execution gap. Clarity is not commitment. Stop confusing knowing with doing. Okay. Like I said earlier, knowledge is just potential power. Okay? Action is what turns it into real power. Stop waiting to feel ready. Don't allow your emotions to decide whether you're going to follow through or not. Make the first move smaller. So when something feels overwhelming, stop looking at the entire mountain. Okay. Focus on the next step and build a system. This is a big one for me. Build a system that makes action normal. So stop depending on your willpower alone. Create routines and a system to make the execution easier. Right? Anything you want to add to that one as
I was
far
just
as
going to
points
say,
again?
I was just going to echo exactly what you said and just say action beats perfection. You just got to take action. No one knows what you were thinking. No one knows what was on your plan. You put a post out and you think, actually, that's not quite how I wanted it. You can delete it or you can replace it. No one will even notice what you notice because they don't know what you're putting out. So don't use excuses. Just take action and just believe in the process and things will start to blow up in the direction you want to go. That's my message for everybody in
Oh,
that
and
execution gap.
amazing advice. Amazing advice. As we start to wrap up this call, I want you to remember something very simple. You probably already know enough to take the next step. I know everyone on this call. Okay. You don't need every answer. You don't need perfect timing. You don't even need to feel completely ready. And you
No.
certainly don't need another week of thinking about something you already know that needs to be done. So remember, the execution gap closes when intention becomes action, right? So whether your next step is a phone call, starting a workout, sending an email, a project, whatever it may be, you know, uh, do it. That Nike commercial, just do it. Because every time you follow through, that's when you strengthen something much bigger than productivity. You strengthen the trust in yourself. That's a big one. So once you follow through, then you start trusting yourself. That's that's a really, really strong bond. So every time you're saying you're going to do something, you actually do it. So you prove to yourself that your words actually mean something. We have conversations with ourselves, and for those of you that missed the session about your inner voice, we're talking to ourselves 24 hours a day. And I say 24 hours a day because when you're asleep, your subconscious is talking to you as well. So, everything that you tell yourself that you're going to do will become reality. So just prove to yourself that your words actually mean something. So this week, don't measure yourself only by what you planned. Don't measure yourself by what you wanted. Don't measure yourself even by what you intended. So ask yourself this one question. What did I actually execute? Right? We always talk about reflecting and having a goal for this week. Every night, tell yourself, what did I actually execute today? Because intentions can point you in the right direction. Knowledge can show you the way, but ultimately it's the action that moves you forward, right? So,
Yeah.
when you know the next action, don't wait for the perfect moment. Just close the gap, close the execution gap, right? I'm going to share my PowerPoint here real quick, but do you want to add anything on that point?
No, I totally agree. And I only thing is what the mind can conceive, you can achieve. I think Napoleon said that as well, and
Yeah.
many others. And you just got to believe in yourself. It's thinking out of the box. Don't follow don't follow the tribe. Think what you want to do, and it's possible. And I've learned that the hard way, that if you can see it and you can feel it, you can achieve it. And that's my message to everybody. You all deserve the life to live now and not 10, 15 years later. But you've got to start taking action now to be there. So see it, plan it, do it.
Awesome. Awesome. One powerful words there. I'm going to do a quick recap. It'll take about 60 to 90 seconds of what we just discussed today. I like to put this PowerPoint together. Here we go. You guys can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Fantastic. All right. So we talked about the execution gap and why people know what to do but still don't do it. Our first topic was clarity is not commitment. Knowing what to do is only the beginning, right? And the key message here was knowledge is only potential power. It becomes real power when you apply it, execute on it, and turn what you know into action. And the three actions we talked about was identify one thing you already know, turn I should into I will, take one action within 24 hours. Then we moved on to stop waiting to feel right. Action cannot depend on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Execution begins when you act regardless of how you feel. So you don't need to feel ready to start. You just need to start. Starting often is what creates the readiness. And the three actions here: separate feeling from commitment, use a scheduled start time, and move before your mind negotiates. Okay? Make the first move smaller. Overwhelming creates inaction. So don't focus on the entire mountain, focus on the next step. Small actions create momentum, and momentum creates results. So shrink the task, focus only on the next step, use a short starting window. And finally, build a system that makes action normal, right? Consistency beats good intentions every day of the week. Systems create consistency. So when action becomes part of your routine, you stop negotiating and you start following through. All right. Put it into your calendar, write it in your calendar on your phone or on your laptop, wherever it is. Remove the friction and create accountability. I love, you guys know I do martial arts, so I had to quote Bruce Lee on this one. He has probably one of the best quotes on the execution gap. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. I love, love, love this quote. And the affirmations of the week. All right. Say them with me in your mind, not out loud. I turn what I know into action. I follow through on my commitments I make to myself. I take action even when I do not feel completely ready. I focus on the next step instead of the entire journey. I create momentum by taking action now. I trust myself because I follow through, and my intentions become meaningful when I act on them. Oh,
Fantastic ending with those affirmations,
thank
Maher.
you. Thank you. Thank you. I have those ready. If anybody needs them, I'd be happy to send them to you. I'll probably post them on one of my social media sites. And I really value everybody on this call. Shazia, any closing words or
No,
statements?
I think everybody's taken away some really important, powerful tools. Now we want to know next week, who put in action everything that you took away from us, because next week is our final week. It's week 8, and it's about planning ahead, and it's looking at building your next chapter. Next week, I will be pulling out the attendance as well, and we were looking at an exciting raffle too. Mahir, would you like to add on to the raffle part?
I'll let you do it.
We will be identifying somebody from the group who has regular attendance to see who can gain a coaching call that will enable you to present what you want to change in your life and see how we can help you move forward from where you are to where you want to be.
Looking forward to it so much. Uh, as we wrap up today, I want to tell each and every one of you that you're in my prayers. I will, I keep thinking about everyone on this call and everybody that joins. I value your time. I know we're very busy throughout the day, so for you to be on here is really, really a joy for me and my heart. And I look forward next week as we wrap up the week 8 as building your next chapter. So we'll wrap up the Mindset Matters sessions next week. And everyone have a fantastic morning, day, evening, wherever you're at. And we'll see you next week. Love you guys.
Love you all and watch the space because you don't know what's coming next. So please keep your eyes peeled on our socials. Take care. God bless you all.
Bye bye for now.